Let's get started. Welcome everybody to Better Results Faster. Couple quotes just to whet your appetite a little bit here, or get your brains going. See what Thomas Edison said? Are we there yet? Not there yet.
No.
Oh.
No.
Hopefully someday. That's what we're trying to be here as a doctor of the future. What did Hippocrates say? Hippocrates is the guy who, we take the Hippocratic Oath when we leave chiropractic school or medical school or dental school. He was the father of medicine. He said, look to the spine for the cause of disease. I think it's kind of a weird thing to say, don't you think? William Osler, this guy, we call him the father of modern medicine. He coined the phrase bedside manner. He said one of the first duties of the physician is to educate the masses not to take medicine. Where did that go? Are we there yet? Not yet, right? Following here, so this is the purpose of our office. Then we'll have the mission of our office. These are things that we take really seriously, that we've spent a lot of time and effort to kind of figure out and get just right. And you'll see flowing through all of those are a few things. Enlightening the mind, which is one of the 3 reasons why this office even exists. That's why we do things like tonight. And then our mission is we lead through 3 E's: example, education, and creating an unmatched, inspiring experience here. And so again, the education piece, these are really important things, the reason why we do what we're doing tonight. Okay, let's start off here. A few statistics. Which nation do you think spends more on healthcare than any other country?
America.
Yeah, you're sitting in it, right? Yeah. Look at this chart. This is from 2013. It won't surprise you to know that health spending in our country has gone up since then, as your insurance premiums will no doubt indicate. And we've actually moved down on the chart as well. Our life expectancy is decreasing. And so we're moving out and down, which is pretty sad, since 2013, because we were already clearly an outlier on the chart, right? So you see what this is saying? We spend $8,500 or so per person per year, and this is the life expectancy that we get. So in other words, there are countries spending a quarter of what we're spending, and yet they get better health outcomes as indicated by life expectancy, right? Kind of sad. When we say health spending down here, and this is why we put this in quotes right here, we put healthcare in quotes, what are we talking about when we say health spending? Let me do it like this. If I say to you, I'm not very healthy and I want to be healthy, what would you recommend to me?
Exercise.
Exercise, good. I'm going to put that down here. And I'm going to write it like this. So we'll put exercise, right? And I'll tell you why in just a second. What else?
Proper nutrition.
Yeah, nutrition, good. And as a subset of that for number 2, I'm going to put water. And again, I'll tell you why. If you think of yourself as 25 quadrillion cells, which you are, I think it's in the OMSI in Portland, they have on the wall, it says a human being is 25 quadrillion, which I think is 12 zeros, cells. If all of your cells are healthy, and so you're just a collection of healthy cells, then you're healthy, right? Now we could go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the things we need above that, but just at a real basic level, the things our cells need are the things that we need, right? So we need nutrition, water, and oxygen. These are the things that your cells need to be healthy. Now, and this is the correct list, this is the list everywhere we speak, we talk all over town, and when I ask people, what does it take to be healthy, they give me this exact same list, right? Do you think what we're measuring here when we talk about healthcare in the United States, are we talking about fruits and vegetables?
No.
No chance. Are we talking about anything, free range beef, like anything, like supplementation, anything like that?
No.
No. Are we, down here, are we talking about gym memberships?
No.
No, are we talking about buying everybody a bike or running shoes or anything like that? No, nothing, a bottle of water?
No.
Anything? No. Right, so nothing on this list is here in health spending. So what are we primarily measuring here? 3 things.
Like hospital stays.
House.
Yeah, hospital stays, yeah, doctor time, what else?
Medications.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals and Surgeries, right? Those are the three broad categories we measure here, and certainly a few other things. But I would point out that none of the three things that you just mentioned to me are these three things. When I asked you how I get healthier, nobody said take another drug. When I asked you how I get healthier, nobody said have another surgery. Interesting, right? Like nobody even thought to list that, right? And I'm kind of teasing a little bit, like it just doesn't make sense to say that. And yet when we say health spending, what we're really talking about is sick spending. The things that you would do if you got sick. If you get sick, then you might consider taking a pharmaceutical. If you get sick, then you might consider getting a surgery, right? If something tears or something, right? But that's what this is measuring, not really health. So we'll put healthcare in quotes right here, okay? Okay, statistic number 2. We are 5% of the world's population. What percent of the world's prescription drugs do we take in this country? Any idea?
50%.
50. That's super high. 10 times our population. What do you think?
75.
I'd say 80.
80.
I was gonna say 80.
80?
She's one.
Dude, wow, you guys are absolutely right. 75%. It's just insane. Like everywhere I go and I put the statistic up, people like, what? How can that possibly be? And it's true, it's sad. We take 80% of the world's opioids. That's been more probably part of the conversation recently because of the opioid epidemic. 80% of the world's opioids are consumed in this country. It's crazy. This statistic is what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's really crazy. If the zombie apocalypse starts, it's going to start in this country because we're all just drugged out. It's insane. The average retiree is on 13 prescription medications, which is 13. And so we have people come in that are 70 years old and they'll say, I'm not on any. And I'm like, right. And that's awesome for you. The problem is your neighbor who's retired is on 26. Because this is an average. So there are people walking around there on 26 prescriptions. That's insane. And people kind of laugh about it. Maybe it's like a nervous giggle or something. But it's not funny when you see the VA, men and women coming here, and they're literally photocopying sheets of paper with all their medications on it. It's not a joke then, right? It's not a joke when my grandma, I go to her house and she's got the pill boxes just laid out on the counter because she can't remember what to take when. It becomes not a joke anymore. It's not funny when you put it in real life. It's really frustrating for us here. And so we're doing everything we can to change this number, right? It's really frustrating. Now there's a time and a place for it, right? Like, let's say you go home tonight, on your way home, and you're driving and you get in an accident, heaven forbid, and your arm ends up dangling from your body. Don't come here. You get it? We don't sew, right? Trust me, I've seen Dr. Ellison try and sew, it's not pretty. So, yeah, we don't sew here. That's why you go to St. Al's, right next to our office, right? They would sew your arm back on and keep it on, and then come here and we'll take care of the effects of the stress from the accident, right? A good friend of ours, chiropractor, just had a massive heart attack. He was about this close to dying. He didn't come here when he had the heart attack, right? He went to the hospital and they kept him alive. And that's where American medicine is #1 in the world. That's where we excel, is in crisis and emergency care. That's where Western medicine belongs. So we're really glad we have it here, right? Huge. Where we're not great is in the chronic stuff, and we'll talk about that. Last statistic, where does the U.S. rank when the World Health Organization ranks the top 40 healthiest countries? Where do you think?
Probably bottom.
Bottom.
So,
Yeah, we didn't make the list top 40. Okay, so 40. Okay. What else? Anybody else?
25.
25. Oh, okay. Good. Anybody else?
30 somewhere, yeah.
30, yeah, in the 30s. Yeah, here we go.
Oh.
39. Yeah, interesting, right? 39th in the world. And everyone's like dismayed by this, and it just gets worse because then what happens is they have a separate list where they pull out all the morbidity statistics, like the ones dealing with death, and they just leave the wellness statistics. And what you get is a picture of how aggressively this population pursues wellness, and we go to 72nd in the world. 72nd. I mean, we're like halfway down the list of all the countries in the world. 71 is Dominica. And I don't know where Dominica is. But I don't think we should be losing to them. It's really sad, right? Like, we've got a big problem in this country. We've got to figure out what to do with it. Certainly we want to figure out how to avoid these statistics for ourselves, right? And our friends and our siblings and our parents, right? Here are the leading causes of disability and death in our country. Is obesity going up or down?
Up.
Heart disease?
Up.
Strokes? Cancer? Right. We could just go down the whole list, and the sad fact of the matter is they're all going up, and that's super frustrating. Because we spend, like just cancer, we spend trillions of dollars a year on it. Researching it, trying to find a cure, things like this. And the incident rate just keeps going up. The success rate is not great. It's really frustrating, and you could go down the list, and it's true for all of them. So super frustrating. So what's the definition of insanity again?
Doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And we've got to stop that. So what are we going to do differently to avoid these kinds of things, right? And we need to do that. Anybody interested in doing that, avoiding that list? Yeah, right? I think that's kind of the point of what we're doing here, right? Okay, last statistic. I could just bore you to death with statistics, but I won't. This is the last one we'll do. So it says people have never been sicker. This is the CDC in 2009. For the first time in the history of man, children born after the year 2000 are not expected to live as long as their parents. Like, that's crazy, right? And again, like, if you have kids, this isn't a joke. Like, I know we kind of like, holy smoke. It's crazy. So I have 5 kids born after the year 2000. If they're average, they're not expected to live as long as me. And I just don't think that's acceptable, right? It's crazy. This has been a thing that we assume for thousands of years, that the longer we live longer and longer until the year 2000. And now we've done such a great job of health that we're like going down the other side. It's just ridiculous. Shouldn't be. Geneticists say we should live 120 years. Some people say, well, maybe we've just reached the maximum and now we go back down. No, 120 years is the goal, and we didn't even barely make it 2/3 of the way there. I think women kind of broached the 80-year mark, but we're not doing that great. Okay, so this is about you, right? This is about you, it's about your parents, it's about your siblings, it's about your kids, right? Your neighbors, the people that you have influence over that you can talk to. How are we as a group here in Boise going to avoid being this statistic, right? Okay, so when I went to school, I didn't kind of conceptualize all this stuff, right? In fact, even chiropractors, like I had been to a chiropractor maybe half a dozen times growing up. Incidentally, Dr. Jesperson, Dr. Ellison, they're lucky their dads, and in some cases grandpas, are chiropractors, and so they're kind of born in this. When I got to school, I had been maybe half a dozen times for neck pain, back pain, and headache. That's what I thought chiropractors treated, those 3 things, right? And so then I get to school, and in the first week of school, well, I should say this. In one of the first days of school, we had a professor who said, look, you have 4 years with these 100 students, and you need to get to know them. So I think she gave us an assignment and said, hey, find 10 people, ask them what their name is, where they're from, and why they want to be a chiropractor. So, first kid in my class comes up to me and he says, hey, you know, my name is such and such, I'm from so-and-so, and my mom was infertile, couldn't have kids, went through, I think, $70,000 of IVS, up 60 or 70,000 of her own money, and it didn't work, so as a last gasp, she went to a chiropractor and she had me. And so I'm here to be a chiropractor. And I'm like, neck pain, back pain, headache. Okay, that's a weird story, right? So then the next girl I talked to, she says, I had the worst case of fibromyalgia my doctor had ever seen. I went to a chiropractor and now I don't have it. So I'm here to be a chiropractor. And I was like, neck pain, back pain? No. Right? And then the next story, I think it was migraines. And the next story was, oh, I heard of Crohn's disease, right? And all these people were telling me these stories, and I'm like, okay, either all these people are crazy, or I am, or maybe I don't understand what's going on here, right? And so, in the first week of class, then comes the president of the college. I think he was the youngest college president at the time. I think he was in his late 30s, and a super dynamic guy from Columbia. He's Dr. Phil's chiropractor in Dallas, and he comes in and he goes, how many of you have never been to a chiropractor? Raise your hand. And I was on the second row, and I couldn't see anybody raising their hands. But just out of curiosity, I turned and looked, and 1/3 of my class was raising their hand. And so I'm like, okay, so now we have people here, they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to be a chiropractor, and 1/3 of them have never been to a chiropractor. That makes no sense. And he goes, okay, so I think I should create kind of a foundation for you before you start into this, because if the foundation doesn't fit, then you probably shouldn't put the time and money and effort into this, right? So he says, number 1 premise of chiropractic is, your nervous system is the master system of your body. It's the one that controls the other 11, right? So there's 12 systems. Let's just name a few. Can we do that? Somebody give me one.
Digestion.
Yeah, digestive system, good.
Muscular,
Ooh, muscular, from the massage therapist in the room, very good. What else?
Respiratory.
Respiratory, good.
Circulatory?
Circulatory, good. I appreciate nobody saying integumentary because I can't really spell that one. But anyway, okay, let's list nervous on here, right? Well, just trust me, there's 12 of them. We could list 12 if we wanted to take a ton of time. So of the 12 systems, which one is the one that controls the other 11?
nervous,
The nervous system, which is what?
in the spine.
Yeah, good. So brain, spinal cord, and nerves, right? And everyone would tell you that. Like I could ask my 4-year-old, what controls everything else in the body? And she'd say, your brain, right? Everybody knows that. It's like nobody's ever argued with me about this. The brain controls everything else, right? So the nervous system is the master system that controls the other 11 systems, okay? Very good. Kind of self-evident, I think. Okay, number 2, he said, your body has an innate ability to heal and regulate itself. Are we good? I'll be honest, at the beginning, I wasn't really good with this one in one way, and I'll tell you what that is. Actually, I'm good with this one, like the regulate piece. I think we all get it, right? Like you guys are eating food, 20 organs are going to come together to digest your food tonight, and you won't even think about it, right? It's amazing, right? Your brain and then the whole system knows how much weight you're sitting on. It knows your blood pressure, it knows your heart rate, it knows your cholesterol, like it knows everything about you. It knows how much light is in this room, and it's dilating your pupils accordingly or constricting, right? It knows everything that's going on. It's constantly adapting to the outside environment. So no problem here. Totally get that. The heal part, and I'll tell you why the heal part was a little concerning for me, is because I know people who have died of things that the body hasn't healed. Anybody else? No? Somebody like that? Heart disease, cancer, right? Like people die of things that the body apparently didn't heal. I was like, so he says, okay, let's start here. What if I cut my finger? Are you like, oh crap, now I'm gonna die. It was a good run, right? As you're bleeding out, right? No, you're gonna put a Band-Aid on it, and 2 days later you're gonna take the Band-Aid off, and lo and behold, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
The cut's gone, right? Yeah, the other day I was using a pocket knife, stupid. Using a pocket knife to screw in some screws, and I pushed really hard and the pocket knife closed. And I thought it was to the bone of my finger. Well, that was a few weeks ago, and now you can't even see anything, right? It's crazy, like, and all I did was put a Band-Aid on it. It's really an amazing thing, right? Same thing, okay, a few Labor Days ago, my son was riding his bike, and he turned too sharp on his bike, and he planted his arm, and he hurt himself. So he's sitting on the ground crying, and those of you who are parents get the fact that, like, I'm in the neighborhood, we're on the driveway, he's screaming, right? I'm like, dude, the whole neighborhood's gonna hear you, stand up, bro. So I grabbed him by his elbow, I was like, you're gonna be fine, and his arm went, right? And so I was like, oh, dang it. So we brought him over here, and we x-rayed it, and guess what? Broke his bone, right? He had a crack through both bones, right? So, again, guess what? We didn't cast it here. We don't cast here, right? So we took him to the hospital, and they casted his arm. Okay. Then 8 weeks later, we came back. We took an X-ray, and guess what?
It was healed.
All better.
It was all better, right? No more breaking the bone. Yeah, Sarah knows all about this right now, right? So yeah, so no more breaking the bone. So would you agree that something in your brain knows how to heal bone in your body?
Yes.
Correct. And it was built in that way from the very beginning. It was designed that way. Right? Are we all good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then what's this? So then I asked him, so what gives then? So he says, is the ability to heal overwhelmable?
Yes.
Correct. He said, and these were his examples, he says, if I stand next to you and I hold a shotgun and I pull the trigger, is your body going to do this quick enough for you not to die?
Probably not.
No. You're going to die like that, right? Yeah, good. He says, what if I take you up to Bogus Basin in the middle of January and you have your swimsuit on and I kick you out of the car and I drive away? Are you going to die immediately like the shotgun blast?
No.
No. Over some period of time will you die?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so over some period of time you will die. Hypothermia or whatever, probably a couple days, right? He says, what if you eat at McDonald's for every meal of every day? Is it going to kill you like the shotgun blast? No. Will it kill you over 2 days like a Bogus? No. But you've probably all seen Super Size Me. Over some period of time it's going to kill you. Right? That guy, he was about a month in and his doctor was like, this is not a joke anymore. You know, if you die, the movie's over, right? Like, there's nothing more you can do. So quit messing with it, right? And that was 30 days in. So over some period of time, little stresses will kill us, right? So, and I agree with him on that, but there's no question there's a built-in ability, the way your body was designed is to heal itself, right? And so good. So I thought that was a good conversation. So your body has an innate or a built-in ability to heal and regulate itself, okay? Number 3 is your spine is your lifeline or your suit of armor that protects your nervous system. Have you ever wondered why you have the hardest bone in your body surrounding your spine? Somebody grab me a spine, actually. Your skull and then the really big, thick bones of your spine protect your nervous system. Why do you think that is?
Because it's delicate.
Super delicate, right? Yeah, the video we show people when they first come in, probably a lot of you remember, says the weight of a small coin is enough to cause a 60% reduction in nerve supply, right? Which means that if I put a dime on a nerve in your arm, pretty soon you're going to come in here and say, hey, Dr. B, my fingers are getting numb and tingly, right? A dime. So it's not very much pressure, so it's super delicate tissue. The other reason that we've kind of talked about already is it's super important. If you lose the nervous system, you lose the other 11 systems. And you don't want to lose the other 11 systems, right? So it's really important they be functioning correctly, right? Okay, let's talk a little bit about this suit of armor just a little bit, break it down a little bit more. So here's your suit of armor, or what we call the lifeline that protects your nervous system. So, I'll show you a few things. So when you look at a spine from the front, first of all, it should be straight up and down, right? This is where the spine gets its strength from, right? I teach it to kids like a straw. If you have a straw and you push on it, it's strong, but if you bend it and then push on it, what happens?
You just bend through.
Yeah, bends more, fails, right? This is a problem, right? Strength, okay? From the side, when you look at a spine, there should be 3 really pretty curves, right? In the low back, there should be a reverse C-shaped curve. Pretty good. In the mid-back, a forward-facing C-shape, and then in the neck, another backward C-shape, okay? This is where the spine gets its spring from, its ability to move. See, your spine is an engineering marvel because it's both movable and it's strong. That's engineering marvel. Like, if you think about it in the world, there aren't too many things like that, and it's really amazing, and all of us have one, which is really cool. And it protects your nervous system. So now let's take the life of an average American, okay? So we, a lot of us, sleep on our stomach, it drops our back out, and we have to turn our head so we can breathe, right? So you get up in the morning, we go down, we eat cereal, whatever, read the newspaper, something like that, right? And I used to say we go to work. Most people don't go to work now. But so maybe like my brother said the other day, he goes, I get on my bed and I sit Indian style with the laptop in my lap, and it's really rough. So let's pretend you do that. So you look like this, you're craning over your computer. It used to be, hey Bob, hey Sally. Now it's like, hey kid number 1, hey kid number 2, hey spouse, or whatever, right? And then we go home at night and we sit in the recliner, which feels amazing, but it drops that curve out of your low back, and you crane your neck to watch the latest crime drama. Right? Is this just me I'm describing? Or is it everybody else? Yeah, okay. And then we get to the end of the day and we wonder why we don't feel very good. Because the thing that does the healing and the regulating and the healing, like all the things that our body does, right? It's not really the way it's supposed to look, right? So modern day life is really hard on our spines. In fact, if you ask Dr. Ellison when he started 30 years ago, how many curves he saw that weren't like this in the neck, he'll tell you virtually 0. 30 years on now, we see a ton that are like this. Bunches of people have this forward-facing C-shape or a straight neck going on, and brought on by tons of technology, right? Cell phones, computer work, stuff like that, right? So let's break this down a little bit more here. So where does the rubber meet the road when we talk about how does your spine create sickness or illness in your body or create symptoms? Here's where the rubber meets the road, which is subluxation, which is, as you go through that process of these, actually, let's bring this slide up, these daily habits that we have, technology or how we sleep, how we sit, poor postures, lifting things, whatever, right? It breaks down our spine, it puts pressure on nerve, it makes the spine not move correctly, right? As that happens, if you put pressure on a nerve, like in this chart, anywhere where that nerve goes then can have a problem. And a lot of times we think of problem as pain. We kind of equate those two things. That's not always true. In fact, in here, the majority of the time it's more of a functional issue. Whether it could be burning, tingling, things like that, but it can also be like lack of grip strength, hard time walking, hard time moving. A number of people who come here will say, I really want to exercise, but I can't because I have X, Y, and Z that's giving me a hard time. So I'm not able to do what I want to do, right? So this is one example on this film, or on this slide, where this is one example of subluxation where you put pressure on nerve. This is a bird's eye view of the disc. If the inside of your disc comes out and puts pressure on a nerve, that's not a good thing. We call that a slip disc, a herniated disc, a blown disc, like people call it all kinds of things. But wherever that nerve goes then can have a problem. This is a view of it from the side. Just one example of the way you can put pressure on a nerve. We call it in chiropractic subluxation, right? These are the ways that we create that. Let's go over, if you'll take your sheets that you have on the back, let's go over these 3 stresses we want to talk about. So this is how you can boil down the stresses that create subluxation in your spine. So if you're at home and you have your sheets, on the back, write the word 3, or draw a triangle like that and put 3 T's in the middle. And these are all stresses. So you'll write stress at the top of your paper, a big triangle in the middle with 3 T's. And then we're going to go through the 3 T's of stress that create subluxation, or really create any symptoms that you have in your life. You want to look at these T's, okay? So who can give me a T of stress?
Trauma.
Trauma, good. Which is physical stress, right? Good. Another T?
Toxins.
Toxins. Very good. Let's put that here. Which is chemical stress. Right? What else?
Thoughts, like emotion, mental stress?
Yep, emotional or mental stress, we'll call it thoughts.
Toddlers, is that one?
Toddlers, yeah.
Toddler is definitely one
Yes.
of them.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit of all 3, to be honest.
It's a 4th T.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to turn this into a square now, or a diamond, yeah. Yeah, you guys blew it out of the water. Okay, now all 3 of these actually, any stress you have in your life will come from one of these 3, I think you'll find. And we can break it down even more, right? So there's a macro version and a micro version of each one, okay? So let's go here. So on your paper, just draw a line down from each one and write macro, micro, M-A or M-I. Okay, what's an example of a macro trauma?
Car accident.
Car accident, very good. Yeah, big, right? Macro is like big kind of things that you can see. Getting tackled in football. We have patients who play rugby, right? Patients who do martial arts. Any slips and falls, the winter's coming up, right? Like anything like that, right? What's an example of a micro trauma?
Poor posture.
Poor posture, yeah, very good. Yeah, poor posture. A lot of it revolves around technology. We talk to moms who carry their purse on one side all the time. That'd be a micro trauma. Carrying kids in the same arm all the time, right? Right? All these little things that we do throughout the day that we may not even really think about. Let's go to macrotoxins. What's an example of a macrotoxin?
Fast food.
Say it again.
Is fast food?
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, that could be macro or micro depending on. Yeah, totally.
Prescription
We're
medication.
recording this in 2020. This is coronavirus time, right? That's a macrotoxin, right? Infections would be macrotoxin. Sometimes the inversion in the valley is a macrotoxin depending on how bad it is and that kind of stuff. What's an example of a microtoxin?
Medication? Or...
Yeah, good. Oh, good. Medication. Yeah, people don't list that very often. That's true. The side effects of the medication, especially. What about mercury in tuna? What about fluoride in toothpaste? What about? I mean, there's a bunch of little things that kind of run through our lives that we don't really think about a ton. They're just not great for our body, and they're considered micro because you can have a little bit of them and be okay in a general sense, but you certainly don't want a bunch, right? We certainly wouldn't want a bunch of mercury, that's true. What about a macro thought?
Like
Stress?
Yeah,
What about like
Yeah, keep working.
depression?
depression. Yeah, depression could be. Yeah. What if your child dies, or a spouse dies, or a family member dies, or a friend dies? What about if a pet dies? What if you get fired from a job? Right? Like these are the big things that probably don't happen that often, thank heavens, but they have a big emotional impact. What if one time one of our kids got hit by a car in a crosswalk, and like it was like in slow motion, all of us kind of freaked out. That had a big emotional or mental effect on us. It was crazy. What about a micro thought? Deadlines, day-to-day work stress,
Day-to-day
right?
stress, yeah.
Yeah, day-to-day stresses, right? And so you guys get the idea. So those are the 6 categories which will cause subluxation and thereby create symptoms in your body, right? And so what we do is we rid your body of the effects of stress here, the effects of these 6 things, and then your body functions like it was designed to do in the first place, right? Okay. Okay, so hopefully you wrote that out on your papers, and you can keep that. That's a huge health lesson right there, which I think seems simple, but I think it's really profound if you work on it a little bit more. Okay, if we could boil tonight down to one slide, this would be it. If you want to say, how do I get better results faster? This would be it right here. So how do we correct subluxation once it's in there? It's what we call the 3-legged stool. So here's the first leg of the stool, and number 1 is adjustments in rhythm. It's really important that we get in a rhythm of adjustments. Your body loves rhythm. Your body likes to go to bed and wake up at the same time. It likes to eat at the same times of day. Your body loves to get in a rhythm. And certainly that's true with adjusting too. The other part of this is when you guys come in and we give you a protocol or a plan for helping you get well, it's not like, we're not like flipping a coin and being like, oh, I think you should come 5 times. Oh, I think you should come 1 time. Oh, I think you should come 2.5 times. Like it's not like that. It's based on studies. It's based on over 50 years of combined experience now, where we've really dialed in what people need from the beginning and what they need going forward, right? And so adjustments in rhythm are really important. This is the other reason why if you're going to be out of town or go on vacation, we ask you to split the appointments you're going to be missing and put some in ahead of time, put some in afterwards, so that we don't lose that corrective momentum or that corrective rhythm. It's also why if any reason you're going to miss, that we ask you to make it up either later that day or the next day at the very latest. So super important not to disturb that rhythm. We're trying to get your body in a rhythm of correction, and it's really important. I'll just say one more thing about this actually. We had a guy, we listened to a guy speak on adjustment frequency, and he said there was a group of 100 men in this case who came in for low back pain and went through a chiropractic series, and none of them got better, at least 4 months of care. And then they put all 100 back through another at least 4 months of care, and in the second study, 81 out of 100 got better who hadn't got better the first time. And he said, do you want to know what the difference was in the 2 studies? We're like, yeah, of course we want to know. Like, we're going to do whatever they did in the second study. He said in the second study, they came 2 extra times in the first week of care. And so he went on to talk about how the protocols that you recommend that are based on long experience, he said they're really, it's on a knife edge where if you miss one adjustment, you may fall off the whole edge. In other words, you can miss 1 or 2 adjustments at the beginning, and at the end you get to the end of the process and you're no better. And so the inevitable conclusion you're going to draw is these guys stink. Like this office doesn't know how to get people better. And it will be all because you missed 1 or 2 adjustments. That's super frustrating for us. We don't want that to happen. And so we're going to do everything possible. Our whole team is going to do everything possible to make sure that you're staying on track with your rhythm and your momentum, making sure that you're getting the results that you want. It's really important for you and for us to make sure that's happening. So it's hugely important that we not miss adjustments. Okay. Chiropractic is done in 3 phases. So you'll probably see the slide right now. The first phase in red is called the initial intensive phase. If we do it correctly, if you do it correctly, you'll only ever do initial intensive care once in your life, right? You should never have to go back and do it again. It's super frustrating to have to do that. It's a lot of time and money and effort to do initial intensive care. We're trying to encourage people only have to do that once. The middle phase of care is called corrective care. There's generally not a lot of pain relief involved because there's not a lot of pain to get down by the time you get there. It's a lot of curve correcting. It's a lot of locking in the muscle memory that we've worked so hard to get right in your body. And it's done at a lower frequency than initial intensive care. And then the third phase is wellness care or maintenance care. And that's usually pretty gentle. That's helping you maintain what you've achieved over time. And it's really cool, really important. And so we have a lot of people in that third phase as well. I think that's all to say about this. Most of you who are here are in the initial intensive phase of care at this point. So very good. Number 2 leg of the stool is break the bad habits that got you into this mess in the first place, right? These are things for which we'd like to pay our team to follow you around and monitor your bad habits and tell you what you're doing wrong, but we can't really do that yet. And so this is mostly your job. You're going to have to figure out what you're doing wrong. My favorite story about this is I was treating my dad for low back pain for a while and it wasn't getting any better. And it was really weird. 2 months is a long time to treat and not get results. Well, he came in one day and he says, you know, I go to my office and I sit on my foot. And so he's like this all the time, right, typing in his keyboard. And he goes, maybe I shouldn't do that. And I agreed. I said, maybe you should do that. So then he started sitting flat-footed. 2 adjustments later, his back pain was down 50%. So 2 months, nothing. 2 adjustments later, down significantly, that he could tell. And it was all because he wasn't sitting flat on his chair at work. So that's kind of a high bar, because there's probably a lot of things you're doing that are asymmetric or just not great posture-wise. As you have questions about that, how you sleep, how you sit, how you work, those kinds of things, when you come in and get adjusted, ask us questions and let's talk through those things. It really needs to be done on an individual basis, but it's really important that you break the bad habits that got you here in the first place. Okay. Number 3 leg of the stool is exercises to strengthen the muscles around your spine. Really important to help you hold your adjustments longer. That's what this whole game is about, is helping you hold your adjustments longer so your body can function well. And a big part of this is exercises to strengthen the muscles around your spine. We will give you those at the right time in your care if you haven't gotten them yet. We'll put them in place at the right time. Okay, we'll go over them with you here. But these are, in our office, we expect you to do them at home. And so we'll give you those to do at home. Okay, let's take this outside of the body and then I'll tell you 2 stories and we'll be done here. Let's pretend you're having a symptom in your body. Oops, I got the wrong color here. Sorry, not a symptom in your body, a symptom in your house. So let's say you come downstairs to get the eggs out of the fridge in the morning for breakfast, right? And you open the fridge and there's no cold air coming out of the fridge and the light's not working in the fridge. What are you going to do?
New fridge.
New fridge. Yes, new fridge. We're good.
Check
New
check the
food.
circuit breaker.
Check the circuit, yeah.
Call a repairman.
Cheater. So yeah, server. Yeah, call repairman, right? We get all these answers. Yeah, check the plug, right? Like at home we have a 4-year-old we call unmanageable mischief, right? She would unplug it. We'd be like, why isn't the fridge working? But if yours is like mine, it's like tucked back in a cubby, and so she probably can't get to it. And so yeah, I'd suggest the next thing you would do is check the circuit breaker. Hopefully before you call the repairman, right? Because if it's just this, that would be good. Okay, so you're going to go out in your garage, and it'll look like this, right, on the slide. And you'll come outside, and you'll have all these little black little rectangles here, right? And then what's going to be on the door right here?
Labels.
Yeah, labels, where things go, right? So number 1, we'll say kitchen or whatever, bedroom, whatever, bathroom.
Hallway.
What is it?
Hallway.
Hallway, right? Right. Yeah, you hope they're accurate and labeled correctly, right? And so you'll go outside, you'll find the one with the kitchen, and it will have this will, in all likelihood, will be orange like that, right? Kind of like these on the slide. There's 3 of them on here that are blown. And so you'll find the one with the kitchen and it's blown, and then what will you do?
Click it.
Yeah, you'll flip it off and you'll flip it back on, right? And it will clear out this blown fuse, right? And then you'll go back inside, and what will have happened to your refrigerator?
Hopefully it's on.
It'll be working, right? Yeah. What will have happened to the same appliances on the same circuit, like your microwave and your toaster and your oven? they will all be working as well. You may or may not have known they weren't working either, but wires work on a circuit, and so whatever's on that wire, it won't be working, right? Okay, let's start here. What caused this to blow in the first place?
Overloaded it.
Overload, right? A surge of stress in the system. Pretty soon you're going to start to hear the analogy, right? Oh, too much stress in the system caused the circuit to blow, right? Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
Bad, okay? So that's the first time, right? So we don't want it to blow, right? Now, what if the surge of stress went up through the system, this doesn't trip and it keeps going? What happens? It fries all of your...
Burnout.
Right? Yeah. We just had this happen during a lightning storm recently. Our neighbors, their computer fried because it didn't stop it. It kept going, and it just fried their computer. So now they have to buy a new computer. Anybody want to buy a whole new set of kitchen appliances?
Absolutely not.
No, right? It's lame. That's super lame, right? Yeah. So this is a good thing in the short term, but a bad thing in the long term. In other words, we'd never leave it blown because then you can't use your microwave and your toaster and your oven and your fridge, right? Whatever's on that same wire, right? Interesting. You start to hear the analogy. Really important. When I was in school, I should just tell you this. The blue nerve chart you have that you got when you came here the first day has a list of nerves on it with a spine, and then it has a list of symptoms you might have. That is the same thing as this in your body, the same thing as the circuit breaker map. We know where every nerve in your body goes, right? And so, same exact thing. When I was in school, I didn't understand this. The same system exists in your body, but there's one major difference. And that is that in your body, it's not binary. It's not on or off like this. It's a dimmer switch, right? And so, here we go. We got this thing and it slides like this. And I always wish these lights were on a dimmer switch. But if I started to turn it down, you'd be like, oh, it's getting dark. And maybe at first you'd be like, can't really tell. And then eventually you'd be like, oh, it's getting dark, and now you'd be like, oh, it's pitch black, right? Same thing. If I started to turn it up, you'd be like, oh, it's still pretty dark. And then you'd be like, oh, it's starting to get light, right? It's the same thing in your body. So all of these nerves on your sheet, they work on dimmer switches. So if I turn it down enough, eventually if I put enough pressure on it, wherever that nerve goes then could have a problem, right? And again, problem doesn't necessarily equal pain. It can. And generally pain is really motivating, but a lot of times it's a functional issue as well. Everybody kind of gets this, I think, this dimmer switch idea. When I reminded him, anybody remember Christopher Reeve? Superman, right? Yeah, he played Superman. And then later he's making a movie where he's riding horses, right? And he gets bucked off the horse and he lands on his head. And he actually shattered his atlas bone, just this top bone in your neck. They call it atlas because it holds up the world, right? Your skull. And he does 1 centimeter of damage to his spine, right? And then what happens? Then what do we see on the outside?
Paralyzed.
He's paralyzed.
Paralyzed, right? So muscular system gone, right? They had to manually help him go to the bathroom. So digestive system gone. He wore a pacemaker for his heart. Cardiovascular, circulatory system gone, right? He couldn't regulate his own body temperature, right? Pretty much all of his systems broke down because he lost the nervous system, right? Yeah, and that's what we see on the outside. You can't tell on the outside that he's had nerve damage. You can't actually see the spinal cord. What you see is all the other systems starting to go, right? So he goes from here, 99% down to here, like this. And then we see, oh, got it. You put pressure on a nerve. And in his case, it was nerve damage, but very similar. And you go from here to here, and function goes, right? And so I think people kind of get this, that nerves are on a dimmer switch type system, right? And so that leads us to this, which is back to our crazy word here. So ation is the state of having something, right? What's the word sub mean?
Before.
Yeah, below. Yeah, below, less, right? Under, yep. Like a submarine. So let's say this is less. Anybody know what lux is? L-U-X? Light. So the state of having less light. I hope light bulbs, speaking of having less light, I hope light bulbs are going off like, holy smokes, I never thought of that. The state of having less light. Now, do we call it light that comes from your brain to your body? I think that's probably as good a word as anything. I don't even think we really know exactly what the messages really are, whether they're sound waves or electrical impulses, whatever, right? Most people think electrical impulses, and so that's probably right. The state of having less light. So if your brain's not able to send light or electrical impulses to that area of your body, you can have problems, right? And so if we get pressure off the nerve, if we add light to the system, then lo and behold, symptoms will go away. It's really cool. So let me tell you 2 stories. So this is Chris. Chris actually went to my school, my same chiropractic school, and he told me this story. So he says, I got to tell you my story. When I was in my late 20s, this was in the late 90s, I won Mr. America, bodybuilder. And he was doing these things immaculately. He was eating really well, drinking tons of water, and exercising lots of times a week, right? And so he wins Mr. America, and a few weeks later, when his picture is coming out on magazine covers, he starts going to the bathroom 15 times a day on average, and he starts bleeding when he's going to the bathroom. Yeah, everybody's faces are like, ooh, that wouldn't be good, right? So he goes to the doctor, and they diagnose him with what's called ulcerative colitis, right? And ulcerative colitis, if you haven't heard of it, is an autoimmune disease. And they said, you are stage 4 ulcerative colitis. And if you don't know someone with ulcerative colitis, you probably know somebody with an autoimmune condition, right? So he's ulcerative colitis stage 4. And autoimmune conditions are really hard because in Western medicine, what happens is the doctors say, well, it's your body attacking itself. Sorry, so there's not much you can do about it. Let's go back. There we go. Someone click the slide button. Oh, I can get here. Right, they're good. So, so they give him drugs. So they give him 4 drugs. One's a low-dose chemotherapy drug. One's prednisone. There were 2 others. One gave him a medically induced hepatitis C, which kind of weirds me out. I don't know. So anyway, he's taking these drugs, and he's like, the next part of the story is I get married, and I don't tell my wife that any of this is going on. So 3 weeks into my marriage, she has no idea about it. I'm in a department store in Dallas, and I have to use the bathroom, which isn't really a surprise. So he goes to the back of the store, there's caution tape on the bathrooms. They're being renovated. And so he found the store clerk, and he's like, I gotta go. And they're like, there's porta potties out front. He gets halfway through the store and loses his bowels in the middle of the store.
Oh.
And so you guys have just eaten, so I won't describe it to you, but it's pretty graphic, right? So he sneaks to the back, the loading docks in the back of the store, and he's like, here's the call to my wife. Honey, I need you to come pick me up and put a towel on the passenger seat. I have a story to tell you.
Oh.
Those of you who are spouses can like kind of put yourself in his wife's shoes probably. So she drives and picks him up, and he tells her the story, and she was like, that's nice. No, she's like, dude, what? Are you kidding me? Right? So she takes him to Baylor Medical School, which I understand now, and at the time, if you have like the 5 best digestive doctors in the world, 4 of them work at Baylor Med. In the whole world, right? It's like a digestive mecca, right? And so he goes there and they do a workup and they're like, yeah, this is exactly correct. You have ulcerative colitis stage 4. So the drugs aren't working, and the drugs are the proper protocol for what you have, right? So we're going to what? Do a surgery, right? Right. So they say, we'll put you on the surgery schedule in two weeks or whatever. The surgery, a few things you should know. We're going to cut your colon out, and you're going to wear a colostomy bag. This guy's 28 years old, 29 years old. A side effect of the surgery is you're going to be sterile, so you and your wife aren't going to have kids. And it's considered elective, so it's a $100,000 surgery.
Oh.
He's already $200,000 in medical debt from the drugs.
Oh.
You see why 3/4 of bankruptcies in this country are medical bankruptcies? It gets out of control, right? So he's like, okay, put me on the schedule, whatever, right? And he flies home to his mom's house in Louisiana, and this is in the days of dial-up internet, right? And she puts out a prayer request to all of her friends. Remember these, like, email prayer requests? So his anatomy professor from high school got the email, called his mom and said, of course I'll pray for him, but before he does anything, he needs to go see my chiropractor. And so she told that to him, and he was like, here's my frame of reference for chiropractors. These are the guys who adjust us backstage and massage our muscles before we go on stage to pose in our bodybuilding shows. So what are they going to do for this, right? So I think a few days before the surgery, his mom finally says, what do you have to lose? Like, just go in and see what he has to say, right? So he goes in and they do an x-ray, and he says, I have an upside down question mark in my spine that I had no idea about. So the doctor comes in and he says, look, you know you have nerves that come out your low back, and they come out like this, right? Both sides like this. And those of you who have your nerve charts at home, it's L1 through L5 and into the S1 as well. And he says, do you know where these nerves go? Where do they go on your chart?
Digestive.
Yeah, lower digestive, right? To your colon, right? He says, right, so you just have so much pressure on these nerves that your brain up here is not able to talk to your body, talk to your colon, right? And so he's like, yeah, this is a fancy name for it, but really what we know is that your colon is not functioning correctly. What if you had Crohn's? What if you had diarrhea? What if you had constipation? What if you had any of these things, right? Could be anything, right? What we know is it's not working right. What you need to do is get as much pressure off these nerves as possible, and then we expect your colon to start working correctly. Makes sense, right? He says, I think it'll take you a year and cost you $7,000. So, and you know, relatively speaking, compared to a $100,000 surgery, not too bad. So he's like, well, okay, so he starts, right? And incidentally, the doctor says, how much do you squat on your low back? 600 pounds on this.
Oh.
You imagine? So yeah, do you think he has some macro trauma on there? Yeah.
Yes.
So he starts, competition weight when he was lifting weights was 240 pounds. He's down to 170 pounds, right? He starts, so he's lost 70 pounds through his bouts. So he starts getting adjusted, and at the 4-month mark, he says the only thing that was different was I was up to 180 pounds. So he's like, instead of losing weight, I gained weight. But he's like, I was still going to the bathroom 15 times a day and bleeding every day. He's like, it's really hard to go past 4 months if you think it's not going to work. And that's true, like 4 months is an eternity, right? If you have that going on. So, but because of the 10-pound weight gain, he stuck it out. At the 7-month mark, the blood stopped, and a few weeks later, he stopped going to the bathroom so much.
Wow.
It's quick, right? Like, when he told me the story, like, I fell off my chair. I was like, this can't, like, there's no way that can be true. So he's like, okay, so, and incidentally, this was in the late 90s, so he hasn't had a recurrence since. He now owns the largest chiropractic clinic in the world. And he's like, I had a few questions back then. Number one, why did Baylor Med not take their own x-ray? They would have seen this just like any, x-rays are not hard, I mean, they would have seen it just like anybody else. Two, if they didn't want to take an x-ray or didn't understand it, why didn't they send me to a chiropractor to have it analyzed? Because that was clearly the issue, right? Super frustrating. And I'll tell you the reason, and we've had over a dozen MDs in this exact class right here. The reason is that they have not been exposed to it just like you have not. We don't expect them to have learned it in med school. Like, I'll tell, you know, I have friends that are MDs, and I'll tell them an outcome we've gotten here, and they'll say, oh, how'd you do that? And I'll be like, did you flunk your chiropractic class? And they're like, no, we didn't have, and I'm like, I'm just teasing. Like, I know, there's no time for chiropractic, right? Med school, we're primarily studying pharmaceuticals, patient care and things like that, but we really don't talk about chiropractic. There's really not a practical approach to nerves in medicine, but that's what we do here. And so it's really cool. Once they're exposed to it, incidentally, medical doctors, nurses, they become our best patients. In fact, I think maybe teachers and nurses are probably the two top professions we have who come here. Because they get it. It's like, oh, it makes so much sense, right? They understand the anatomy and the physiology of all of it, right? Okay, last story. Oh, incidentally, let me just add one to the list here. So Chris told me, he's like, I forgot one more thing. He said, I forgot cells need one more thing. They need nerve supply. And I just had never thought about it, right? And you can make an argument that the nerve supply is the most important, Certainly you can make an argument that it's the one you can live without for the least amount of time. If I cut a nerve to anywhere, that thing's going to die immediately. You can go for a while without nutrition, for a while without water, even for a few minutes without oxygen. Nerve supply you have to have all the time, or the thing at the end of that nerve dies if you cut it off, right? So really important. Let's bring this in-house and tell you one more story from our office here. This is Tia. Tia is an only child, and her mom is a divorced mom, right? So it's her name's Christy, and she will often come here and tell the story, and it's way better when she does, but you'll have to bear with me telling it tonight. This was about 15 years ago. We went to speak at ACHD, where the people who sweep the streets or lay down new roads. And Christy was there. This is where Christy works. And this is why we go speak in the community. We're always looking for opportunities to speak. And Christy was having back pain, so she comes in after the talk at ACHD. And she's very consistent. I think she came 3 times a week for 3 weeks. And she was super consistent, right on time every time. And then in the 4th week, on Monday, she doesn't show. And this is super weird for us. And again, this is why we call if you're late, because we want to know what's going on. She doesn't call back. Wednesday, she doesn't show and doesn't call back. Friday, she doesn't show and doesn't call back. And so we're kind of getting worried about her. Well, the next Monday, she actually walks in the office, and she's looking really disheveled. No makeup, bags under her eyes. Her hair was crazy, right? And we're like, holy smokes. Like, hey, Christy, what's going on? She goes, my daughter Tia has been having, she's 10 years old, she's in 5th grade at Liberty Elementary in Southeast Boise. She's been having urinary tract infections over and over and over, and they keep giving her antibiotics, and they keep coming back, and then they'll come back, and they'll come back, right? And this is a story that bunches of parents can tell that same story. And they don't know why, but it came to a head the other day when she collapsed at school. 5th grader. So the nurse called me on Monday and told me I need to come pick her up. So I took her to St. Luke's. And so now she's been in there, and they run all the tests, and they don't really know what's going on with the UTIs. And they say one of her kidneys is shutting down or backing up, and they don't know why, right? And so they're panicked, but they don't really know what to do because they've tested everything they can test, right? So we said, you really should bring her in, and let's take a look at it from this perspective, right? So we did, and here's her scans. You'll see on the screen. You'll notice in the area of her kidneys up here, that's a 38 and a 29. These should be a 4 or a 3. We should have small green bars down to big green bars, like a Christmas tree shape, right? Down here, this is a 24. This should be a 7 at the most, right? And so we also found a weird curve on X-ray as well. Wish I had those films. But Christy said, do whatever you have to do. Christy was in a panic, right? She had been in the hospital for a week and didn't really know what was going on. And so we start treating her, and this is her scan after 4 months. You'll notice a 38 and a 29 are down to a 6 and a 9, and our 30 or 29 is down to a 10. Again, this is the area where the nerves go to the kidney. At the bottom is where they go to the bladder, right? Since this scan, 4 months into her care, she hasn't had one urinary tract infection, and her kidney function's back to 100%, right? So sometimes it's not the refrigerator. I would argue the majority of the time it's not the refrigerator, right? It's the wire that goes to the refrigerator and the oven and the stove, right? Wherever. This was huge, right? So let's put Tia and Christy, their family, on this chart, right? So we got spending here, we have outcomes here. Anybody want to guess what their spending was in the ER for a day at the hospital? Kind of depends on who you ask and what bills you read, right? It seems to fluctuate quite a bit. I think $5,000 to $8,000 a day is about right. So now they've been there for 7 days in the ER and the PICU. So we're talking $35,000 to like $55,000 somewhere. That's like the other end of the room, right? What were Tia's health outcomes? Not great, right? What if we don't go do the talk at ACHD? Where's Tia?
Don't want to know.
She had
It's weird, right? Like there's a spectrum. She could have died. That's probably
kidney was
over dramatic. Yeah, I don't know. You can live without one kidney, right?
She would have
She
had to have
could have-
surgery.
What is it?
Should have had some kind of surgery.
Yeah, so she could have surgery, she could have had a kidney removed or something. That's probably in the more likely range. She could have spontaneously resolved, which to me seems kind of unlikely too. But somewhere in the middle, maybe she loses a kidney, maybe she's on dialysis, maybe, like, who knows, right? In any case, her quality of life would have been majorly affected, and probably her length of life would have been majorly affected too, right? So when they came to this office, we pulled their spending way down and we pulled their health outcomes up. In fact, the other day I looked up, Christy and Tia have been coming here for 15 years, every other week. Tia moved out of state a couple years ago, but they came for 15 years, every other week after their initial intensive phase of care. They didn't spend together in 15 years at this office what they did in 7 days in the ER. It like boggled, right? It's crazy, right? And so their spending came way down and their health outcomes went way up. Now I would suggest that this is what Americans need to do in order to get our country up in here, because we want to be in here. We don't want to spend a ton, but we want to have really good health outcomes. I would also suggest to you that these 4 things are the list that we need to do better to get ourselves there. Admittedly, it's more complex than that, but this is a really good list. And I would submit to you that the one you can't do of these 4 by yourself is nerve supply. You can't check your own nerve supply. I can't check my own nerve supply, and I know how to check it. But I get adjusted by Dr. Ellison and Dr. Jesperson every week because I need this checked, because I want my body to function at its optimal level, right? And that's what these things do, as we do them really well, right? So here's your list. It's not really complicated, right? We've also built this office to be able to do number 4, the nerve supply, as efficiently as possible. Those of you who have been in, you'll note that we're not spending hours of time like appointments you might have at the dentist or the doctor or something. We're trying to keep your appointments at a really short amount of minutes or small amount of minutes, so you don't have to feel like you're carving out a bunch of time to be here. In the beginning, you'll need to come more often, and so we don't want you to have to carve out that time. So we're trying to make it as efficient as possible, right? This is actually dollars and cents practical in your pocket. This was a study done by 50,000 patients or clients of Blue Cross Blue Shield. And here's what they come up with, right? It says a 7-year study showed that patients whose primary physician was a chiropractor experienced the following results: 60% less hospital admissions, 59% less days in the hospital, 62% less outpatient surgeries, and 85% less pharmaceutical costs. It's like, this is like, yeah, none of this is theoretical, it's all super practical. And that's one reason why I love chiropractic, right? Really cool. 50,000 people. Good. So just to conclude, the premise of our office, everything we filter everything through in this office, is the families in our practice are healthier and safer than those who aren't in our practice, right? And I think if I would have put this up at the beginning, a lot of you would have been like, that's kind of a weird thing to say. But hopefully now we've kind of laid it out in this context. Hopefully this makes tons of sense to you, right? You'll see about 1/3 of the people we see in our office are kids under 12. And this is why it's way easier to keep kids when they're off 1 degree to get them back online than it is to get an adult who's 40 degrees off the line to get them back. Not to mention the adult has bad habits and years of training of things that they've started doing that we have to break, right? Kids, like an adjustment for a kid is like 10 for an adult. And so it's really awesome. We see babies that are day old all the way up to, I treat my grandma, she's 92, and so I'll treat her too. And everywhere in between, right? So we love it, seeing kids. And very good. So my last question is, who do you know? On your sheet at home, you should have lines on the bottom of your sheet. If you want us to call people and invite them in for a no-cost consultation, a complimentary exam, we'll do that at our cost. This is the only time we do that here at no-cost exams. And so if you will write their name and their phone number down, and if you'll get that back to us next time you come in, just bring that sheet with you. Then the girls will call whoever you write on that sheet and invite them in. What we would ask you to do, it's really critical, please call them ahead of time and let them know that they're going to be calling, because we don't want these to be cold calls. It would be awkward for everybody. So let them know that we'll be calling, and we'll call and offer that to them. If you want, you can bring them to a class here. We do classes here, and when you come, we'll give you out discount coupon cards or whatever for exams. And we'll have that offer for people who are here that aren't patients, that they can come in and get checked complimentary too. So if you want to put them on that list, just get that sheet back to us. The other thing is, if you have connections with HR or a hobby club or a business or anything where we can come and speak, please let us know that too. We'd love to do that. We'll bring lunch to where you work. We'd love to come speak as well. We can do it between 15 minutes and an hour, whatever the company wants us to do. So if you have opportunities to do that, please let us know as well. Otherwise, thanks for coming. I'm going to get home. My wife, there's 5 kids at home. I'm going to go make sure my wife hasn't killed anybody yet. But if you have questions, I'll be up here for a few more minutes.